take up too much time because there's somebody much more interesting than me to follow on. The Scholars Scholar. By now, everybody should know what the Scholars Scholar is. If you don't know, you're about to know. So, back in 2011, at an conference, a scholars conference, I met Jillian just after I'd come back from my studies and my time away, and we started to talk, and basically, fast forward, the idea of a Scholars Scholar came to be, which is a scholarship funded by scholars or ex-scholars, alumni, right? But anybody is welcome to contribute. We don't turn money away, okay? So even if you haven't finished your studies and you're feeling flush, come. Right, so that is basically what it is. So it is an idea for us to try and pay it forward and keep the fires burning. Just imagine if somebody of Mary Kachale's caliber has been a recipient of a scholarship. Now imagine if you are directly involved in something like that happening. It only takes one, and I know there's many more Marys in here. Some Billies too, yes, but we need a lot more Marys. Sorry, guys. But you understand the concept of what I'm saying, right? A scholar has that special magic in it because you were once a scholar yourself, and now you can actually help someone else to do what you are doing. At my old age, it does feel good to be involved in such an initiative, and you will feel it maybe when you are my age, but don't wait that long. You still have time. Save yourselves. Bring warmth to your heart. There is no obligation, guys. It's just a call and a reminder about what each of us in our own small little ways can do. Okay. So that is my little pitch, again, as every year. And thank you for everybody who has supported the Scholars Scholar. We have had some very, 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 very special people be scholars, so it's nice to be, it's not nice, I'm proud to be associated with them. We have now 5 scholars, yes. We are not yet at the point where alumni are fully funding a scholarship, so we need our numbers to grow. So if you meet a former Canon Collins scholar, ask them if they know about myself and the Scholars Scholar. If the answer is no, call me. Yes? Justice, the revered Justice, our legal brain, our humble brother. He is a previous scholar, or he is a scholar. Yeah? We have Serene, our mathematical whiz kid. They're at the same table, you see? We can add to this table here. And this year's scholar, I'm pleased to announce, is a fantastic guy called Phila Msimang. He's from my province. Well, it's not mine, it's my adoptive province, Durban, UKZN. And he is about to blow you away. When you hear him speak, you will understand the magic, the extra sprinkles. We all have sprinkles, but there are some who've got like a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like that thing. You will know why he's got a special little extra magic. Phila, over to you. Oh, and his favorite movie, as is mine, is Gladiator. We have watched it a collective 73 times.
Yeah,
so I am not weird.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, first of all, thanks for the other talks that have come before. You set the bar pretty high. Everything was so inspirational tonight. Yeah. I never really thought I'd be standing here one day speaking. I'm just going to tell you guys my story, how I've come to become the Canon Collins scholar, or the Scholars Scholar. So I grew up in a typical household, typical for where I come from anyway. I live in Galuza, which is just outside of Pietermaritzburg. It's a township there. I grew up with my grandmother. She was the person who was there for most of the time, but my mom was still around when I was young. Got an older brother, and a younger sister who came much later on. But when me and my brother were young, everything was great. We went to good schools. My brother played sports. He used to beat me at everything. You know, he is older than me by 4 years, so yeah, it's good that he beat me. But yeah, growing up, everything was nice, was great while we were still in primary school. But things began to change. They changed slowly over a period of time, but they changed in some serious ways. When I was about in grade 5, my mom passed away. And after my mom passed away, things began to change. My grandmother's health began to deteriorate, but it was a slow process. Eventually, she was senile and demented, which happens to people once they reach old age sometimes. But this was happening during my high school career. My brother was also, he finished his high school career, and by the time my grand's health had deteriorated to that level, he had finished school, but he had to go out and try find some work to try support home. This he did for some time, and after a while, he was able to get into school. But during this period, I was at home. I was at home with my grandmother and my younger sister. Now, my younger sister is about 10 or 12 years younger than I am. Let me think about a birthday. Yeah. Yes, but I've got a younger sister. Very cute. Well, she's old now. She's like 15, so not so cute anymore. But but yeah, I remember when she started grade 1 in Maritzburg, at a school in Maritzburg. We'd wake up in the mornings. I'd make her sandwiches. We'd take a taxi together into town. I'd leave her at school, and then I'd go, and I used to work odd jobs. One of the jobs I had was really fun though. I was working at the Natal Museum, and I was assistant to a natural scientist there. Basically, they called me an assistant to a scientist, but my job was to fill bottles with alcohol and then take worms. She was an earthworm specialist, so I used to take worms, plonk them in alcohol, put a label there, and put it on a shelf. That was the job. So there were a number of these odd jobs that I did. I was always, during this time though, I was writing, I was reading. My relationship with the museum, it just didn't happen that all of a sudden I got that job. I had a long relationship with the museum. During my time in high school, I used to write poetry, and I used to perform this poetry. And at the museum, on a Saturday, they used to give us the hall there. And it was a bunch of adolescents, young guys, sort of lost, and we'd come there and we'd express ourselves. This is how I got into writing. This is how I got into reading a lot of things. And this continued on until I finished my matric. During my time there at the museum, I met this old man, this really strange old man. I used to sit in his office sometimes, and we'd sit there and we'd talk and we'd argue about things, and every once in a while, things that we'd speak about, he'd give me a book. He'd say, oh, go read this, because obviously as a young kid, you're ignorant, but you think you know things. But yeah, he entertained me for a while. And one time he took me to this bookshop. There's a charity bookshop at a hospice. Hospice is, I'm sure everyone knows what a hospice is, but they had a charity bookshop there. And the interesting thing about this charity bookshop was that it was in a neighborhood, and in this neighborhood it was the neighborhood that old people go to retire, old university professors would retire there, and so when they died, they left their books to this charity bookshop. And that's where I used to get books for like 3 Rand, 5 Rand, 10 Rand, and I ended up volunteering at this place. Personal interest though, volunteering there, so I'd get the books first. But I was in charge of the classics, the philosophy, and there was another section. It was classic philosophy and children's literature. Children's literature, obviously I'd buy a few books for my sister. Philosophy, whatever's good, I take home. But yeah, I was sorting and pricing those books. And over a number of years, my interest in philosophy grew. By this time, my gran was increasingly sick, but my sister was still going to school. She got a remission at school fees remission, which enabled her to stay in school, because it wasn't really easy being able to cover her school fees at the time. Family eventually stepped in once they realized how serious the situation was, but it was a long time just my burden. And my brother was still in school trying to finish his degree. He entered as an older student, a much older student than other students, to try and get that done. So during this time, I actually managed to write a book eventually. The book had a bit of poetry in it, a bit of philosophy in it, but the book is terrible, so I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Even the poems in that book are horrible. But what happened during that whole entire process is that made me believe I could do something. I wasn't able to go to school yet, but I thought, no, this is actually something I want to pursue, and I'm really serious about this. So during this whole period of time, I carried on reading, I carried on writing. At some point, I had to get a better job than the job I had. I became a full-time journalist, which was a bit tricky with my sister at home, but we got a helper to stay during the day, and then I'd come back in the evening while being a journalist. But during that time, I managed to write an academic paper in semiotics, an area of philosophy. And I was really, really happy about that. But obviously my boss wasn't, because I was using the time where I should have been doing journalism to be doing research and writing. But, they tolerated me at work. Eventually, my gran dies. At the same time, my brother just finished school. And then he went to Joburg to try to get a job. Things didn't work out the way he had planned. So he ended up a bartender in Braamfontein, sleeping on a couch there. During that time, I was trying to apply to school. I applied to UKZN, or before applying, I just reached out to a philosophy professor and just started to speak to him. I'm like, okay, I've seen your work, I've seen your program looks great. I'd actually like to come study philosophy with you at some point in time. And he's like, oh no, great, that's fine. And we carried on corresponding, and he saw that I had a deeper interest in philosophy than students that he sometimes speaks to. He's like, oh, okay, so tell me some of the things you've read. What have you written? And I send him some of the things I've written, and by that time I already had a paper. And he was like, what? This doesn't happen until later on in your career. And he's like, okay, we got to get you into philosophy here at UKZN. Long story short, I had to submit a portfolio of work, and he was my champion at the institution to get me in. And eventually they just told me that, okay, I can just start by doing a master's, an MA in philosophy, no undergrad, no honors, straight to master's. And so when I got the news, I quit, obviously. I quit work. I was speaking to an uncle. He didn't really believe the story, but then once it started happening, he's like, okay, what do you need? And I said, the only thing I need is for you to put my sister in school, because then I don't have anyone I have to worry about every day. When I come home, it's just me. And then it just means food, lights, water that I'll take care of, and I'm just at school. So I continued on I went back to doing odd jobs, and while I was pursuing my studies, I got help from my supervisor at school. Things were going okay, but it was unfeasible. So it was somewhere near the middle of last year where it was just getting a bit too difficult, and UKZN couldn't give me a scholarship at that time because obviously I just had a matric, really, and there's bureaucratic boxes you have to tick. And I was telling one of my friends about this. He's also a Canon Collins scholar. I was telling him about this, and he's like, why don't you just try apply? I'm like, I can't apply. I don't meet the criteria to apply anywhere. No one will give me funding. I had tried to apply to other places before. And he's like, no, just try it and see what happens. And that's Klein over there. So I decided, okay, the worst that could happen is that I'm told, no, you can't. But yeah, I applied, and things worked out. I was called to an interview. I came to the interview. I spoke to the interviewers, and then I think after that I get confirmation that I'm in, and then I get to continue my studies. Although I'm not putting it in the best of ways, but it made things possible that weren't possible before. It made me able to continue on with the dream I've had for such a long time, because sometimes what happens in your life, the material pressures, the things that you have to take care of, will stop you from progressing. But Canon Collins has helped me to stay living my dream. Because all I've really wanted to do, I realized from maybe 19 or something, was do philosophy. It just took me some time to realize this is what I'm doing all the time. I'm bored, I wake up, I read philosophy. I wake up in the middle of the night, I want to write philosophy. When I'm done, end of the day, get into bed with a book, I read. These are things that make me happy. And this is what this has given me the opportunity to do. So what's the point of the story? The point of the story isn't really about my personal story. It's about the support and the institutions that helped me get to where I am. Because without any of them, if one of them weren't there during this process to get me here, I'd have never ever been able to get to where I am. How many other people haven't had the dumb luck I've had? I've had lots of dumb luck, really. Getting the job at the museum, meeting Peter, who sent me to hospice there where I found the books, having Klein tell me to apply to Canon Collins. So what I'd like to tell everyone today, what I'd like everyone to think about is how we can actually have our institutions become places that can capture, that can grab people who would otherwise fall by the wayside. Because that's the purpose of the institutions. Social institutions, when they work well, are there for your lowest of the low in society. Yeah, thank you.